It's really a pleasure to have you all here. My name is Öykü Işık. I am a professor of digital strategy and cybersecurity here at IMD, based in Lausanne, Switzerland. And these days, also, I have to say, here at IMD, it is all about AI, right? It's buzzing with AI. We have new programs, new session on AI among faculty, among the whole bigger IMD family. This is a topic that everybody is so curious about. There are questions, there are ideas, there are predictions of the future, what is awaiting us, and etc. So I am super excited to have the opportunity as a part of the IMD Book Club to talk with Cindy Candrian on her new book that is called Cindy, what is the title of your book? Maybe I should have you actually introduce it.
Yeah, it's called You and AI, a guide to understanding how artificial intelligence is shaping our lives.
This is amazing, right? Because clearly AI as a concept is not new at all. When you look into the mathematics behind AI, some of the well-established algorithms that we're still using today has their math back in 1940s and 50s, right? Even the concept of a neural network that sits in the center of deep learning algorithms today. So from a math perspective, of course, there are developments, but majority is not new. So AI as a concept is not new. But since the ChatGPT, since the generative AI revolution, there's this huge spike, a huge peak of interest. Everybody is so interested in this. They are experimenting. And thanks to these tools being very accessible, right? Now we can actually try these things out and test their benefits and limitations ourselves. And your work, Cindy, is, of course, you are co-founder of Delta Lab, so maybe it would be really interesting to hear what you're doing, right, day to day that relates to AI. But you also have a PhD from University of Zurich, and I found the title of your dissertation super interesting, which is Competing in the Age of AI, Understanding and Leveraging the Human Factor, which is something that we're really trying to crack still, isn't it? So I would like to start the conversation by just asking you, how did you end up doing that research? And how did it turn into this book that we're talking about today?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. What an honor to be on IMD and to be talking with you, Öykü, about this topic. So my research really started, or my interest started, when once I was driving with my mom in her car, and she just got a new car. That was over like 10 years ago. And we were driving, and she had this control, like this distance control, and all these kind of new technological advances, which were pretty cool. And she wasn't using it. And then I was like asking her, like, why don't you use it? And tried her to help her use it, but she just completely blocked off and didn't want to use any of these tools. So then I started thinking about, like, even if we have these pretty amazing tools in the future, if people are going to use it, you know, they're useless. So that's what really fueled my interest into having like the human factor in this whole technological world, because we can have the coolest things, but we need humans to really be willing to use it and design them in a way that people are willing to use them. Mm-hmm. So at that time, I was still studying finance, and I decided to look into these algorithmics and AI advisors, and thought about if it's maybe possible to try to de-bias human decision-making through the use of these systems again, or are people not willing to rely on these systems even if we have them in the future? And that's when I started my PhD, and I looked very much into this question. So how can we leverage the human factor? What do we have to do that actually we can improve outcomes, not just systems? So if we have the perfect system, it's not as worth as much if we have maybe a system that's not quite as accurate, but people are willing to use it and it actually improves our outcomes. So that was really what I was looking at during my PhD. And from there on, when I finished my PhD, I founded Delta Labs together with my assistant professor at that time. And where we also help companies now in the business world, because my research was focused on the business world, right? leverage AI technologies, but in a way that actually people will use it. So we always put the human in the center, and we call this hybrid intelligence. So try to leverage the human as well as AI. This is what I've been doing.
Yeah, and trust, you just talked about it a couple of minutes ago, right? Trust is such a core element here. And I am vaguely familiar with the work being done from a research perspective on the role of these automated algorithms that you were talking about in forecasting specifically. And I'm aware of concepts such as algorithmic aversion. So when, just like your mom, people are drawn to these algorithms, using these algorithms or not, right? So, and there's a big difference in the way as humans we build trust. So there are quite a few different factors. And you said you started from the finance domain. So I imagine the way, let's say AI is approached in finance could be quite different the way it is approached in, I don't know, engineering domain. So I think there are still differences in the way we define these things, right? So how do you provide a definition of AI that is it very clear for you, or do you also say no, this is actually a moving target? So how do you approach when you hear this question? How do you define AI?
Yeah, well, this is actually an extremely challenging question. And a fun fact, when we wrote the book, this was the most challenging chapter for us to write. It took the longest time because there's like tons of definitions, but all of them are like all over the place. So even if you just Google it, you get like 1.2 billion search results on Google, which are, many of them are very contradicting. So we started to try to, show the range of AI definitions. So at the broadest definition, AI can be said to be algorithms. So basically just set of instructions that a computer follows and to achieve a certain goal. But this is more like than a cookbook, which you have a kind of a recipe that you follow for a computer. So these algorithms have been here for centuries, and really talking about AI is maybe a bit difficult when we talk about algorithms because they're not really learning and intelligent to me. So when we go on the other side of the range, when we look at the narrowest definition of AI, we can talk about technology that entails some kind of human intelligence to solve a complex area of tasks. But if we would define it like that, right, we wouldn't have AI today, because all AI systems that we have are focused on quite narrow tasks, and human intelligence is much broader. So it's also not really bringing us to a goal if we just say we don't have AI today. And so what I think is maybe a bit of a in-between solution, which many people seem to agree on, is if we say that AI refers to machines that can reason, learn, and perform certain tasks in a way that would require human intelligence. And I think that's a pretty good way to define AI. But again, we can go down the next rabbit hole where we talk about what is human intelligence, because again, there's no definition for that. And so it really depends who you ask what AI is. But at the same time, we can differentiate many definitions by two aspects. Some focus on the output and some on how the process works. If we take a definition that focuses on the output, we would say if the output requires some form of human intelligence, it is AI. But then again, we can think about a calculator which calculates simple math or complex math, and this would then be AI, right? Because if a human would do it, it will require human intelligence. So I think, and many researchers think, it makes more sense if we talk about AI and the definitions to focus more on the process. So can we develop these systems that act and learn, and that is closer to human cognition? And there is where the focus of the modern research is really going, to try to develop these kinds of systems.
Because in the field of AI, so many interesting things you just said, right? You talked about narrow intelligence, which is maybe also important to highlight here, that everything we have is indeed that we today use AI and create value with AI is very narrowly defined, measurable tasks rather than generalizable or comparable to generic human intelligence, right? But there is the whole discussion in the field going on today and asking, is generative AI bringing us one or multiple steps closer to this artificial general intelligence? So imagine creating an algorithm that can not only play chess, right, Deep Blue, or like AlphaGo playing Go, but creating an AI that can play any game, right? This can be one example of when we say we need, not just one very specific task, but we want generalizable algorithms. But then there's the third group that some people discuss, maybe at a much more philosophical level, because there are no currently practical, let's say, proof towards it, is the machine consciousness concept. And I guess that is the example most people give from a more doomsday scenario perspective, right? Is there a possibility that when we say AI, that it will be conscious, it will take over the world, and etc.? So about that, we actually prepared some polls for our participants today. So Faith, can you please launch the first poll question? Because I'm really curious to see whether our participants today identify themselves as one of these things, that they are, I am an AI optimist. This thing will, for the better, change the world. Or maybe some of you say, I actually don't like where this is going, right? I'm rather on the pessimist side. Or maybe some of you will say, oh, I'm still kind of in the learning phase. I'm not sure exactly what this implies. So I'm just going to give a couple of seconds for everyone to respond.
Most of them are optimists.
Yes, we have some pessimists. This is kind of, I think this is kind of, I was expecting to see more undecided. So in a sense, this is nice. What do you think, Cindy? How do you, I think I know what you'll say, but still, what is your stance on this?
Yeah, well, I think I am definitely an AI optimist. I strongly believe in the future and the power that AI can bring us. We can really achieve groundbreaking things. But I am also cautious about the future. And I think that if we don't get things done now, it might be too late at one point. So we should be cautious, but I am definitely an optimist. Maybe a cautious optimist. Is there something like that?
Cautious optimist. I like that.
What about you?
Me as well. I am a bit more, there are days that I'm more pessimistic than others, right? But I think for me, the source of my pessimism on the days that I'm pessimistic is not about the technology itself, but the way we use it, right? So the lack of, or jumping too quickly to implementing stuff without really realizing the full extent, full implications that they may have, right? Especially when we're talking about AI used by law enforcement agencies or AI used by governments, that are scary for me, right? That is sometimes that creates some stress for me. But overall, I also believe there's so much that we still can, and only just starting to achieve with AI. I was going to invite you, our participants, to write on the chat, because there are some pessimists, right? We'd like to hear your perspective on this. I'm now reading that Albert says his heart is optimistic, the head doesn't know yet. That's a good one as well, because we're still collecting and processing all the information. There's something going on almost every day, isn't it? There's such a speed field overall.
Definitely.
And what are these? You say you're an optimist, Cindy. So what are some let's discuss pros and cons, maybe, right? This is a good way to start getting in depth in some of the applications that we can see with AI today. Where do you think we will see the most valuable contribution with AI?
Well, I think there are basically three areas that I think are really interesting. One is the precision of AI. So, right, AI can sniff out the simplest and smallest pattern in data and give it to us to improve our decision making, which is very interesting if you think about like doctors and radiologists that can really be supported by these machines to find or diagnose at a higher accuracy. Again, it's about the combination. It's not the AI alone, so it's about the combination. But the precision of AI is definitely one of the main areas. And here we did also our own research where we looked at if we're given this advice, again, in the financial context by AI, if this can de-bias our human biases. And actually what we found was that people tended to act in a more rational way and decide less biased when they were assisted by an AI advisor, which is something that I find extremely interesting, because it's not only about the performance of the system studied in isolation, but it's also what happens with our decisions. They're actually a huge potential. Another area is also the autonomous systems now. So, earlier systems were more advisory systems. Now we have these performative systems that can truly take over tasks for us. So especially now that the world is just so fast, we cannot keep up to every task. And I think it's very good that we have the ability to delegate certain tasks and to AI. Also, again, here we saw in our own research that this also improved our delegation decisions. So our costs that we're willing to take not to delegate, so to keep control, were reduced. So this is an efficiency increase, basically, talking in economic terms. And finally, what I think is also a huge benefit is the creativity that it brings to the table now. So one area is that AI itself can be creative, which I think is interesting. But what interests me even more is that studies have shown that AI can increase human creativity. And that's what I think is extremely fascinating, that it can help us, for example, overcome design fixation, which is a common phenomenon in human creativity. Yeah, so this is basically the positive sides of AI that I really see. The negative sides, of course, biased AI is a huge thing. This can have very bad consequences in our society. At the same time, also misinformation that can happen through these hallucinations of the models. And also talking about being able to delegate tasks to AI, we come to de-skilling of human capabilities. So what happens if we continuously delegate these tasks to machines? Will our own tasks reduce? And if you imagine, for example, a pilot that's always flying on autopilot, but in the case of an emergency, he's really forced to take over the plane, but he doesn't have any training anymore in flying, and this can have catastrophic consequences. And this is just a metaphor, but the same could happen with our society if we aren't proactive and really trying to already, act against this already now. So I think to me, these are some of the biggest pros and biggest cons. Of course, there's really more.
And there's so much to unpack there as well, right? I mean, I think the pilot example you gave is a great indicator that there are design elements that we need to take into consideration. And it's not just the technology design, but the way we design embedding of this technology in our processes. Some people refer to these as the guardrails around AI, right? How do we make sure that if there's a bias, we catch it proactively? How do we make sure that we have the right legal frameworks in organizations and at the country level, and etc., and that there is a global cooperation and alignment and etc. So there's a lot of work going on. But you talked about creativity. That's interesting, right? Because I was also a couple of weeks ago reading an example of, if I'm not wrong, a furniture company using AI to design or explore new furniture designs, and can I actually manufacture this? And is there really utility and comfort even if I manufacture this, right? This is super interesting. Another example, there's a company here in Switzerland called Firmenich, right? They develop taste and smell. Let's say their main work is at the molecular level, and they created an artificial taste of grilled meat taste to be able to use on non-meat products, which is interesting, right? AI was a support there. Or the other day I saw on the supermarket on Coca-Cola, a can of Coca-Cola that said AI flavored Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
Right? So
I also saw that.
yeah, do you think these are examples of creativity? How do you say can machines, can algorithms be creative in the way we define human creativity? What do you think?
Well, so technically speaking, when we talk about creativity, there's three different types of creativity. We have this exploratory creativity, which is taking things that are there and really trying to push the boundaries. An example would be Monet, that always like drew his water lilies over and over until it reached a level of abstraction that was something very new. And in that area, AI is really good. So it can really do this because it can train on far more data and push the boundaries in a very easy way. Then we have combinational creativity. That's like when you take different things and combine them. So more like a DJ combining different tracks, you get a new track. This is also an area where AI is really good. But then the third area is transformational creativity. So these are the moments that completely redefine the landscape. This is, for example, when Picasso came up with his new cubism area. And so this kind of creativity is something that is still very difficult for AI. So we have to train these systems to act in an irrational manner so that they can come up with this kind of creativity. And however, what is interesting again is that we can use these algorithms and tell them to act in an irrational manner. And while some of these outcomes are complete random and cannot be used, we can use the human to evaluate which things are nice, which things, resonate with our emotions. And there it is, again, very much a combination between human and AI creativity, which is needed because AI alone is not good in that area. But generally speaking, we can say AI is creative, but what is also interesting is that when you tell people AI created this, their perception is not very good about it. So this is another aspect. Even if AI is creative, I think we will still need the human element because people are just very negative and not very happy about things that AI created, because this is creativity, right? Is something that is just inherently human to us. It's not something a machine can do. And I think it will just take time until we kind of adapt to the idea that machines can be creative. But still, I think the best creativity is really the combination of humans and AI. And I'm not sure, but if you heard also about the architects at Zaha Hadid, which I think is also a very good example.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they actually, right, they're one of the biggest architecture firms. And they have these really special designs. But now you can actually just prompt Midjourney to give you designs by Zaha Hadid. So even like people like me, which have absolutely no talent, can prompt Zaha Hadid and come up with these amazing things. So you would naturally think, right, that this is a disadvantage for Zaha Hadid, but instead they actually use it for their own advantage in the product design. Or in the design of these, and they prompt Midjourney for like 150 designs in the development stage, and take the best out of every idea of AI. And they take, I think, like 10 to 15% of these designs and combine the elements they like to form even more innovative ideas. And they say that for them, it's really a game changer because it can really help them. So even creative industries, which are now a bit afraid, right, of the future, seem to be, can leverage this technology to create fascinating things. And I found I really watched a lot of interviews with them because I thought it was so interesting. But yeah, if you have some time, definitely look into their design process because it's really fascinating.
Your response reminded me of the debate that indeed we are seeing in the creative industry in general, right? The deal. I think I'm also looking at the questions. Some of them relate to that as well. Our still lack of a proper framework to put this on. So I'm thinking the Adobe Firefly case, right? So here Adobe has a generative AI capability, text to image. And Adobe, to train this AI model, used their repository of digital art, right? Who created this digital art? Digital artists, right? And as a response to Adobe's launch of Firefly, they were a bit upset, like many other creative industries. I'm reading about authors now suing OpenAI, saying that you use my book as a part of your training material. No consent was given, nobody asked for my permission, and etc. There are many lawsuits going on right now. Or Getty Images, the internet image repository, suing Stability AI with the very same reason. And we do see, at least from an OpenAI perspective, they are pushing a bit back, saying that there was no intention of breaching the copyright. We are doing this for research, innovation. So we're not trying to monetize somebody else's copyright, but we're using to develop these AI algorithms. This is a little bit of a different story. There must be a different evaluation. So this is kind of the other side of the argument. But the other day, Adobe said, okay, we recognize, we understand. We are willing to, I think they said, we're going to pay a one-time fee to our digital content creators to recognize kind of their efforts, right? So from that perspective, tying it again back to creativity, what do you think? Do we have a way, how are you going to clarify these things? What do we need to work on to kind of make this a bit easier to digest for all of us?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say I'm not in the creative industry. So if I talk about it, it's always easier to talk about it when you're not really.
You're right. Yeah.
When you take an outside perspective, I definitely understand why people are angry, and I definitely understand why this is not okay. So people shouldn't just take their material to train these systems, and I fully. However, if you look at it from another perspective, and that's also something I heard from these architects, is that when you really create, right, you also creativity doesn't just usually fall from the sky, but you're also influenced by other artists. So in the same way, we should try to maybe, I don't know, have like a framework that we cannot create things that are too close to certain artists, but have a certain influence. To me, this seems like a valid way to go. And I heard it from people working in the creative industry. Still easier said than done, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But to me, I think giving a fee to people, like similar to Spotify, right? When you listen to their music, the artist gets paid. In the same way, we should pay these artists. And I also heard about like this like magic thing you can put over your images that AI cannot use it to train be trained on. This might also be a way to go in the future. And I'm definitely on the side of the artists.
So we need to figure a way out, basically, right? So I think this is one of the reasons why there's some more anxiety about generative AI more than anything else, because it's kind of uncharted territory for our policy-making mechanisms, our legal systems. And indeed, I'm quickly glancing through the chat. There are great comments in the chat talking about an international consensus, right? So of course, which is super difficult to achieve, but there are initiatives going on that try to bring public-private research and civil organizations together to have a bigger perspective on this. But every example you give is kind of hinting towards collaboration, right? Collaboration between humans and AI. So maybe it's interesting to talk a little bit more about teaming up with AI. So what are some critical success factors around this? Maybe it would be very interesting to hear some case studies, if you have any, that organizations that are maybe doing already a good job at this. What are the good examples that you see around you?
Yeah, well, I think when we team up with AI, what is extremely important is that we know what AI is good at and what AI is not good at. So humans are really good at like having this moral and ethical context. We have emotions, we feel how the other person might be feeling, we can connect to other people, and we understand the world around us. This is what AI is not really good at. So we should really focus to have this always in every situation. So we should try to promote these aspects of our human benefits. At the same time, what I think is a critical success factor is that we always keep our critical thinking. So if we just start to blindly trust these systems, things will go wrong. And I think a very good example is the case where a lawyer went to court
Yes.
fact checking, right? So then you'll be in a situation which you don't want to be. So always remain, even if it seems like critical thinking will not be as important anymore, I think the importance actually increases in the future with AI. And where I see some cool developments really is, for example, in healthcare or doctors diagnosing, I think it was tumors and skin cancer, where it showed that actually the system by itself had lower accuracy and the doctor by itself had lower accuracy.
Yeah.
When you combine the mathematical thinking and the pattern recognition of AI with the gut feeling and the experience of the doctor together, they actually had higher accuracy. And I think this is just a great example of why we need to collaborate, because the sum of its part is far more powerful than if we have just a human or an AI.
That example about the lawyer, it is fascinating. You're talking about, I think it was the case in the New York bar, that indeed it was a personal injury case, and a lawyer was trying to collect examples. And it was the judge who recognized and realized that the examples cited in the folder were non-existent. So this is a great pointer to the fact that when we're talking about generative AI that operates on large language models, the goal is not accuracy, but plausibility. So can this thing generate plausible, in the choice of, in your language choice, in this case, English, I guess, plausible sentences, right? So the error is on the part of the lawyer, in my opinion, not knowing the limitation and treating, in this case, ChatGPT as a search engine, which is not, right?
Yeah.
It is not prioritize its output based on accuracy. It doesn't care. It cares about creating something that reads nice and sounds like a sensible English language. So I guess there's a lot of learning that needs to be done also on our side, and really recognize, like you said, what these things are good at, but their limitations as well. Because at the end of the day, ChatGPT does not have common sense, right? I mean, it's us that have the common sense, and it's just operating based on the training data it had received. So I guess coming back to your point on collaboration, that we kind of complement in each other in certain ways, is, at least for today, seems to be the way to go.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's why everyone should really know more about these systems. And I also hope that this is my hope, or one of the hopes for the future, that now that we interact so much with these systems, that we all kind of, or also the educational systems, start to train people more about what AI really is. It's comparable that every business student takes accounting classes, even if he doesn't want to be an accountant. In the same way, every person should know some things about AI, even if you don't want to be an AI specialist, and exactly to prevent such cases in the future.
I think if this is becoming a common, let's say, element in our digital world, we all have to have that minimal understanding about it, right? And on the other side of the coin, if our organizations, governments, what have you, is using a consumer-facing, citizen-facing application with AI, then it's also we should be informed about this, right? Because it also, I'm looking at the questions and comments on the chat. There's this pointing towards, do we have the right to choose? Actually, at this case, right? Because sometimes we don't even aware that we are interfacing with an AI-powered algorithm, and it's super difficult to opt out if it is. So from that perspective, a couple of minutes ago, you talked about these biases, right? We are also biased creatures. So of course, anything we create has that very same characteristic. So AI is also, whether generative or not, is also biased. What does it tell from a responsible AI governance perspective? Because we all agree that we should minimize these things, fine. But what exactly is the actionable set of actions that organizations can follow if they are interested in either creating their own AI applications or maybe buying off the shelf from some of the vendors out there? How they can start?
Mm-hmm. So generally, I think that we should promote explainable AI. There's a long research background already in that area where we can understand how a system provides us with a certain advice. So this can be very, very important, because if I just trust this system, but I don't know why it came up with this advice, it might be that I make a biased decision without even knowing. So I think that developers and also the users should have a certain possibility or a certain chance to, understand how this system came up with its advice. Then I also think that we should talk more about what kind of what fairness is really. So we know that we don't want biased AI, and we know we want fair AI, but what is fair and what is unbiased? And there, I think we really need a discussion among everyone, not only among some technological elite that kind of decides this for us. I think all of us should have a word and a say in what we want, because if we talk about the mathematical foundation of fairness, there's like at least 21 definitions of fairness. But what kind of fairness do we want? Just an example would be that if you Google CEO, 11% of the search results are female. However, in reality, I think there are like 27% CEOs that are female. So should we have now systems that give us results that are at 27%, which would technically be fair and unbiased, but it's just stereotype mirroring, which is also not something that we want. So most probably, many people would say we want 50% representation of female CEOs in that case. But in this case, it might seem a bit more straightforward. But then when other factors come into play, it's really about how far do you want to go until you start to disadvantage certain other aspects of people, demographics, backgrounds, all these kinds of things. So really talking about fairness is very difficult. And I really hope that we get an open discussion in the future so that we can define and decide where we want to go with these systems.
Yeah, it is important to realize that there has to be a mathematical representation of everything we want to encode in this, right? At the end of the day, it will come down to probabilities and statistics. That is the language that AI talks. So indeed, like you said, we all want a fair system, but then you propose a great choice. There are choices. Do we want it to represent the way society is today? Only about 25% of CEOs are female. Or do we want it to represent where we want to be, right? Which has a difference when you represent it in mathematical terms. That's a really good example. How about the role of regulations here? Because that also relates, right? So for instance, if I am creating an AI system and if I'm using personally identifiable information, there were also several comments on the impact of this on privacy, right? How should we approach regulating this? Because there's also several different approaches globally as of today. I was just checking the other day. I think there are around over 70 countries right now that are actively working on some form of regulatory regulation, some form of regulation. And then, of course, AI Act is maybe one of the most stringent or strict ones, looking into classifying AI algorithms in low, medium, high risk. Is that a good approach? I know China has its own set of regulations. US has typically been more on self-regulation, which big tech we've seen, I think that it's not really effective, because then most of the time growth and profit decisions take over other issues. So how do we find a common ground on this, and how do we is this an achievable goal to try to have a regulation on a global technology that works for everyone, right? What do you think about that?
That's an extremely good question. First of all, I'm not a legal expert, but I can give my take on AI subjects. So I think that AI is advancing at enormous speed. So keeping up with regulations is a huge challenge, because regulations naturally take longer. And I do think that it's a step in the right direction, and we need regulations. We also need to set boundaries. We have to say what happens with this data, who can take this data, for what use cases is it allowed, how transparent do we have to be, also regarding, again, explainable AI, all these kinds of systems. So we definitely need to push very strong to set up regulations, and we also need to ensure that the companies are actually adhering to these regulations. At the same time, I also believe that it's also a bit up to the people using it. So because regulations they almost cannot keep up with the speed of AI. So it's also a bit about our own way of using it. So you can't hold a hammer accountable for hitting your thumb. And in the same way, you can't hold AI accountable for doing some fake news if you prompt it to do fake news, So I think it's definitely, we need regulations, but it's also up to every individual to try to use it in an ethical way and try to give it his best. Yeah. I just hope that this is the future.
So clearly I'm hearing from you that this is a multidimensional problem. And often, as someone who has been following this since GDPR, how the regulatory bodies in Europe, of course, especially, that take a perspective towards regulating anything that surrounds data or use of data and technology, I think it's clear that the speed is an issue, right? The speed of technology development versus the speed we can actually create and try and test these potential regulations, but also understanding of technology. I hear from many technologists that GDPR is a regulation written by regulators for regulators, so it's not really very easy to apply, and we are today seeing its shortcomings as well. So to avoid falling into that trap, right, clearly we need a multidisciplinary approach to doing this. So technologists must be involved, but like many comments are highlighting, of course, then they would push for their own interests. So that requires civil society being informed. But there is a based assumption in all this that civil society or government actually know there's clarity in the understanding of what this technology is and how it works, and what are the shortcomings and what are the potential advantages, right? So clearly this is not that easy, and will take time, right? So in that meantime, I think, coming back to what you just said, it is on the responsibility, on the shoulders of the organizations that are doing this, are using it to do it in a responsible and accountable manner, as you were highlighting.
Definitely. And I also think that it's not really, you cannot blame the end user, because it's just impossible to read through all these regulations. I mean, if I go on a website, I just accept, I don't read any of these things, because it's just, I'm not a lawyer, I don't understand it, and I just couldn't bother to just read everything. And in the same way, I think many people don't read it and just accept terms which are not okay. And
no,
I think there's also a funny study that was done where they tested it, and they in one abstract they wrote that you agree to give up your firstborn to use this website, and 98% of the participants actually accepted. So I think people are not reading it, and
we don't read these things. No. See, I mean, even with, again, data protection wise, we're not done. And I totally agree with you. It is not the responsibility of the end user, right? Why would it be? It's if as an organization I'm benefiting from this, then it's on me to communicate about it. properly. There was this research I had done a couple of years ago on communicating your AI, looking into indeed what difference does it make if, say, a financial organization uses AI service in a back office function versus in a client-facing function. And we clearly saw the expectations are different, right? So there's a lot to communicate on what's in it for you, what's in it for me, how does this thing really work? What is not just how you're collecting my data, but what are you doing with it? And it shouldn't be just an element of making things easier for the organization or bringing in more profit, but what's in it for the end user? What's the benefits that I'm getting? So there's indeed transparency is a key element here. From one funny point to the other, as you said, the funny example. I was reading the other day. Of course, it's a bit of a entertainment piece arguing that if you are kind to ChatGPT in your prompts, if you say please, for instance, that the results are better, right? Of course, again, let me clarify. This was just a funny argument. There was no science behind it, so to say, no data to support this. But still funny to think about how sometimes we attribute human traits, right? Consciously or subconsciously, that we kind of, when talking about AI applications, we say he or she, right? Or we say please, we say would you? So what do you think about this whole anthropomorphization element, right? And attributing human elements? Because I know that there's a new research stream looking into this as well to say, does that impact the way we trust these things? And I think it does, right? And then you talk about this in your book as well. So what is your take? What is your take on this?
Yeah, so this whole anthropomorphization is about giving names and images and personalities to systems or machines. And we human then tend to interact in a more human-like way. So we will respond to the other machine like it's a human. This can increase, for example, the closeness that we feel to a company. So if they use names and images for their chatbots, we feel closer to this company. Studies show that this is the case. And also we form more trust and loyalty towards them. So in certain areas, companies use this to actually elicit this human response in us. But it's not always the better way to go, because in certain areas, you don't want to elicit this human response. For example, in the studies that I was talking about before, where we tested if we can debias human decision-making, our results showed that when we actually made the machine more human-like, the decision-making of the participants was actually, again, more biased, because they, again, responded like another person was telling them this, and this was not good to them. So in certain situations, you want to keep the machine a machine. And in certain situations, you want to make it more human-like. But whenever you try to make it more human-like, it's also a very slippery slope to go. Because if you try to overdo it, you can fall into this uncanny valley where the machine is very human-like, but not quite human-like. And then it is very strange for us humans. And we feel very uneased about the situation, and our satisfaction just drops drastically. So when companies try to overdo this whole anthropomorphization, they should really be cautious about designing the systems. One, because it should be congruent, so all the factors should work together. And also because they should always look at the situation of, do they really want to elicit this human response? But fun fact, I actually also always say good morning to ChatGPT.
I also want to take a couple of course, questions from the chat, and I saw a couple of pointers to the overall impact on the economy, right? For instance, I was reading a question on, will it really take away jobs, right? I think it was Amit that was writing, is this really a worry? Are there any examples we had in the past that we can, compare to? What do you take? What do you think about this?
I think there are many studies also from the World Economic Forum that are talking about the future of work. And historically, we can see that every technological revolution led to an increase in jobs. Even if there was a stage where maybe certain jobs went back, and there was an increase in other types of jobs. And I think in the same way, this will happen with AI. So definitely there will be many jobs going away. But I also think that this is a huge chance, and we can get other types of jobs, maybe more human-centric jobs, maybe more jobs that really value the human element and less of these repetitive jobs and jobs that are maybe just done on the side. So like we can focus on the things that make us unique in our job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that my hope is, and also what I read in many studies and many scientists predict, is that we will get a net gain in jobs over the time, even if we get a reduction from certain jobs right now. And I think we should just all remain flexible. So we shouldn't keep holding on to the job as it is now, but we should try to use AI in our job, get some kind of AI literacy by using it, so that we learn what AI is good at, how AI can actually support us in our job. And in this way, we can transition to this new type of job. But when we just stick to our old job, I think that is pretty, well, these jobs are pretty threatened of people that do not want to change their jobs at all, and they will most probably be replaced. But still, I hope that in the future, we will get an increase in jobs through AI, like every technological revolution until now. As a result.
I think I kind of compared this to what happened when we started using personal computers and spreadsheet applications. There was years ago an article on Wall Street Journal, I think, looking into this, and how when before Microsoft Excel, there was Lotus 1-2-3 and other spreadsheet applications. And when they were launched in the personal computer market, the demand for accountants went significantly down because people started self-servicing, right? But the demand for financial analysts at the same rate increased. So that's, I think, what you're saying in a way, that some tasks will be automated, but that means other opportunities will be open for in-depth analysis. So we will need other kind of knowledge input that may increase the demand for other jobs, other skills, right? But one thing is for sure, that we need to, this skilling the workforce element should be starting from as early as possible, right? This clearly we need an understanding on not just AI literacy, as you're referring, but probably the skills we need will be more technology demanding than others. So I guess that's also another example you were giving.
I think that's an excellent example, what you just brought. Yeah, totally agree.
I'm just looking at the chat to see other questions. There was one on and I'm just going to take a look at the time as well. Well, how do you, when you were writing the book, you saw many examples from around the world, right? And often when I talk about the topic, the question comes up saying that, well, because we here, especially in Europe, we worry so much about personal data protection. We are much more stringent in this. We are much strict. And that puts us in a negative place from a competitiveness perspective, right? So how do you, the question from Gabriela is about that. What could this mean from a competitiveness position of Europe versus the rest of the world, if the rest of the world is less worried about these things?
Yeah, well, I think it does give us a disadvantage on one hand if we talk about the speed and the development, but at the same time, I think it's more important that we kind of value our privacy, and I think that's above the development of the companies. And I hope that the other countries kind of adjust to us, and that we're not the ones adjusting our privacy concerns to the others. And yeah, I think that's my take on it, that above the competitiveness, we should look at fairness and privacy and at really keeping these things okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. So it may not look as competitive on the stance, but there's a possibility that it will end up being a competitive advantage as well. Being optimistic about this. Not everything is about being the first, but indeed it's a choice I think Europe is making to be with regulations, especially on technology, of being values driven. Right.
Yes.
So that's indeed a choice in that sense, that
Yeah.
may make them a bit slower, but if there's a belief that that is the right thing to do.
Yes.
So going in that direction. Yeah.
I think it's also like a front runner in another, maybe not technological front runner, but having the policy as a front runner is also something that we can be proud of.
Yeah. And another, maybe one final question that I will take is, I'm seeing a question on empowerment in terms of individual empowerment. How do you see the role of AI on the way forward? Does it really empower us, or is it the other way around? Because there was a huge discussion on the chat about, well, so many organizations are already using AI that we're not even aware sometimes that so many services that we're interacting with are already using machine learning. So what does this say from a choice perspective? Again, does this empower us, or the other way around? What do you think?
My take is that it empowers us. This is also very strong in the area that I researched on, which is hybrid intelligence, which there are many studies showing that when we actually just let AI do the things by itself, the outcomes are not as strong as when we combine our skills with AI. And I believe that for the future, and that's what we also do at Delta Labs, we should always set the human at the center. So we should design systems that really empower the human, because I think this is the more sustainable way to go. Even it might seem tempting to just replace humans right now with AI, because it sounds like, you know, you can cut a lot of costs and it can do it quite well. I think in the long run, it will not be a sustainable way to go. And the companies that already now upskill their employees and use or tailor these systems to empower their employees will be the ones that will have the most sustainable advantage in the future, in my opinion.
Thank you, Cindy, because I think we also recognize that we're going through a phase, right? The things that they are right now will most likely won't be the case a couple of years down the road. We are all together learning and internalizing these things. It's very difficult to predict what will happen, isn't it? I mean, we tend to overestimate technological impact in the long run, but underestimate it in the short run. So it's very interesting to see what is coming our way. But maybe as the final question, maybe if you can wrap this up. We started with your book, even though we didn't specifically only talk about your book. But still, these are all the topics that I think somehow involved there. Who did you write this book for, right? Who is the audience? Who should read your book, do you think? And of course, what are the key takeaways? If I ask you, what are the 3 key takeaways that we always do in IMD sessions, right? That people, the readers, should get out of your book?
Yeah, we wrote this book for basically everyone that is interested in AI, but not necessarily with a technical background. So we wrote it in a very entertaining way. I'm trying to bring fun examples and trying also to get the readers on board. The aim is to increase AI literacy among the general public, so that they can really have a neutral perspective on what AI is, where we stand, what are the impacts. And from there on, we hope that they can make their own picture and try to, you know, stand for their opinion. And this was basically the reason why we wrote this book. And the takeaways are that definitely we have AI has extremely wide-reaching implications on our society, and we should be aware of these. And we should all know more about AI, and that we believe that the power of humans and AI together is the future, the so-called hybrid intelligence. And we hope that many companies and many people try to, you know, implement this kind of solution in the future.
Thank you, Cindy. So we are cautiously optimistic, right? And I'm
exactly. To close the circle.
Even some of our participants are saying that, Gabrielle, maybe I may move from undecided to optimist. So that's nice to read. And we again, everyone, thank you so much for joining. I don't want to keep you longer than what we asked for. And if I did not see or read your question, my apologies, but there was amazing content in the chat, great discussions. So thank you very much for your attention, for being here, for sharing your thoughts with us. It's always very interesting to hear this. And thank you, Cindy, for your time, for your research, for the book you've written. We need to keep keeping an eye on the research in general, and we need to keep generating accessible content, right, for everyone to keep up with the topic. So thank you very much also for being here and for contributing to the field.
And thank you very much for your time and the questions. And it was a great session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And have a great day. Great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.